Welcome to the Close to Home podcast. Real life, real people, real stories. Insight and inspiration from Close to Home brings a fresh perspective on home, business, and life. Join the professionals across real estate, construction, insurance, and financial lending to gain perspective not only from their individual and professional experiences, but also from their life stories. Well, good morning, guys.
Good morning, Dan.
Morning. So I've got my co-hosts here, Jim, Jaclyn.
Good morning.
Ashley. How are you guys?
Doing great. Got some coffee this morning. Doing wonderful.
Awesome. Well, this week's a pretty important topic. Spotlight's going to be shining on Jaclyn, and we're going to be talking about the importance of the importance of having a broker when you get your insurance, right?
Yep, that's true.
So
Dan's going to learn all about insurance this week.
I am. All I know is that when you have assets, you need to insure them. Make sure that you're protected.
That's true.
So pretty high level, a lot of insight right there.
You're an expert already.
Boom.
In
He
apparel.
just knows Jaclyn's phone number. It's on speed dial.
That's
7:30
exactly
a.m.
how you do it.
every Tuesday and Thursday morning.
Well, anytime there's an incident, peril, or anything else, you want to be made whole again. That's why you paid your premium anyway, right?
100%.
So, all right, Jaclyn, you ready to take this away, or you want us to fire questions at you before you even start?
No. Hey, you guys feel free to interrupt. There's a lot to this. So first of all, let me kind of chat about what a broker is. So in insurance, you have agents that represent a particular company, and then you have brokers, which represent numerous companies. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits and importance in why you use a broker is the wide selection of options. So like in particular, every insurance company is going to have their niche. They're going to want young drivers or not want teenage drivers, or they, don't want elderly drivers, or if you have a single accident, they don't want you, or somebody who's like, yeah, we'll take up to 3 or 4 accidents, or we're going to rate accidents for 3 years versus 5 years. So there's a wide variety of, different, what they call rating factors. That's really more important for me to understand than the customer. But what they need to remember is that an insurance broker has a wide array of options. So like our agency specifically, so Brightside, on the personal lines, we have like 30 different companies that we can shop.
And that's as opposed to shopping one.
Correct.
Okay. So like that's
huge.
To me, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
It is.
So you're saying I don't have to call 30 different carriers to get a bed?
Exactly. So convenience is another reason why you want to use a broker, is because you have one conversation with me, and I'm going to dig in like we talked about in another episode. I want to understand your pain points. I want to understand what keeps you up at night. I want to understand your home or your auto or your past or your goals, so that I make sure that I'm representing, so I'm addressing your insurance goals, right? And protecting against those risks. But I get to do that at a baseline. So I take this information and then I shop all the carriers at the same coverage. You don't have to worry about like, well, this one's going to do this, and I put this one in different, and then I've got, this 800 number person calling me, and I've got this other agent from another company calling me, and all of a sudden your phone is bombarded and your email
Text
is
messages
flooded with quotes and everything looks the same, but reality, it's not. There's numbers on insurance policies can look similar and be so different.
So is there like a perfect policy number, like this deductible, this, that, and whatever else that like other agencies will just kind of use as like a generic, and it's still not enough? Like, how do you know?
So you have to have conversations. So
Right.
Just like probably in your business, you're not telling somebody what they need. You're asking them questions. You're trying to understand what the goal of their kitchen or their bath is in order to actually make a remodeling recommendation, right?
Absolutely.
So the same goes for insurance. Like, I need to understand different things about your home. Like maybe you're buying a home and it's an older home. So we need to understand like what systems are in place, how new, how updated, because there could be potential risks if things aren't updated. And I want to know that so I can protect against that.
So like the difference when you say systems, do you mean like HVAC systems or, hey, we've got, this home was built in the 50s and it's got aluminum wires, not copper?
Correct. I mean, that, or I mean, even plumbing,
It's a lot of detail.
there's a lot. Roof is a big one, especially here in the Midwest. There sometimes can be carriers that will not insure you if you're buying a house with a roof more than 15 years old. I mean, I have carriers that'll do that, but the majority of carriers will not.
And if they do, boom, it's up there.
It is. It's pricey. So, I mean, there's lots of things to consider when purchasing a home and understanding if you have old wiring or if you have older systems or, again, if there's been some history of water issues, like making sure that you've got water backup or you have service line coverage that covers the pipes underneath the house. I mean,
If they're in a flood zone.
if they're in a flood zone, some of the lending requirements will require you to hold flood insurance, and that can be pricey as well. And so, Jim, I know that sometimes you deal with people with all levels of credit, that can sometimes be a pain point, right?
It is. It absolutely is. And, the floodplain we run into a lot. So with every single application, you will have to have a flood determination, at which, one point they may be facing that.
Yeah. And if that's the case and they're already on a tight debt to income ratio,
That could be the difference.
that could be the difference. So,
So you're telling me that we need to find a broker. In my mind, it's not so much knowing everything that you know, but finding people like you.
Right.
Or finding you or contacting you. How does one go about knowing if they're dealing with a broker or an agent? Like, is that a question that they can ask?
absolutely. Yeah. You can ask, like, how many companies do you represent, or are you a captive company versus a broker? There are even captive companies that do some brokerage accounts, but it still benefits them to push their own main company.
Right.
So you just have to, I think the thing is you want to have somebody who works for you. They're not an employee of a specific insurance carrier.
Right.
So we are just outside of St. Louis. If we have somebody who's listening in, I don't know, Montana or Florida, what kind of questions should they be asking them? Whenever, like, what's the introductory question? Hey, how many people or how many different companies do you represent? But, what's next? If they say, hey, I represent 3, is there a difference in representing 3 versus 10 versus 30? I mean, I think I know the answer because you represent a lot. I don't know how many it is, but.
Yeah. So, we have about 30 different companies on the personal line side. You definitely want more than a couple.
Sure.
If that's going to be your one-stop shop, right? And that's ideally what we all hope for. And any traditional broker is going to have access to numerous.
Okay.
You may have captive companies that have partnerships or have spinoffs that they might be able to shop a couple extra companies, but they're still an employee of and representing an insurance company and an insurance company interest.
So let me ask you that. So if you're working for a larger company and whatnot, and so say they stray and they do what they call a broker, is it a situation where, people have to make money placing these policies, obviously, right? So wouldn't there be a little bit of a situation where that might work out just a little bit better in your category because you don't have to split?
Correct.
How, am I saying this properly? Because I don't know insurance very well either. I just know for the way I talk, I need an umbrella policy because I'm going to get sued.
Good reference there. So are you talking about on the commission side, or are you talking about like if somebody's got the client's truly best interest at heart because of the carriers that they may be swayed to put them with versus another?
Well,
Both?
I hadn't thought of that. I was just thinking it would cost them a little bit more to go out and do that because they have to split with a house.
No. So there's no, a client never pays more. Doesn't pay excess fees depending on where they go.
So if I work at company A and I say, okay, they're not fitting very well within my policy, but I do have this over here where I can send them here.
Right.
You know, what I'm saying is if I send them here, I just didn't know if some of that's going to the captive house or not, you know, versus if you just wrote them directly. That's what I was asking.
No. So, any companies that have any type of brokering options, those are negotiated on the back end. So that's more of a...
So back to Dan's question, you know, which is basically, it doesn't matter where you are, you have to ask the right questions.
Yes. I would just ask, like, if you're a broker or if you're asking for advice, like I would ideally like to work with an insurance broker. That way they're going to give you the best of what's pretty much in the market.
So establishing the trust is a big deal. Obviously, for me, that's what I'm pushing, and we've had the opportunity to, you know, do so. Not everybody can do that in a phone call, you know, and so once that trust is earned, but I feel comfort. I'm one of those that review every year, and I recommend everybody review their insurance every year. And if you have one person that can run it by several situations and review your policy for you each year, that's a lot of time, a lot of work. I'm in.
It is, yeah. Probably the hardest part of my job is staying current with the ever-changing environment. So probably much like you and your business, we have to know our competition. For the 30 plus carriers that I'm writing for on the personal line side, I have to know when they make updates. I have to know when they've changed what their target market looks like. I have to know if there's any changes. We just had a carrier last fall that used to be one that would write roofs over 15 years. And literally I got up one morning and I went and did a quote, and they weren't an option anymore. So
Really?
Literally just like that.
I remember when you said that, and I was
Yes.
excited because that's a big deal.
Yeah. So, and again, you have to stay on top of the why. You have to you have to be an expert in your industry and with your carriers. So, that's a huge thing. And like you said, establishing the trust. Yes, you have to have a trusting relationship. You have to know that the person is always going to have your best interest at heart. When you work with a broker who doesn't matter if I put you with carrier A, C, X, Z, whatever, my goal is at every renewal, we will always place you with the best option.
Well, here's my trust established with Jaclyn. I've had the pleasure of working with her for a little bit here now. She is not afraid to deliver bad news. Now, if that doesn't earn you any trust, I don't know what does. But, you know, you want it. We talked about this in other casts.
Yeah.
You want to have, you know, somebody who can deliver the news, good, bad, or indifferent, because you want to make a good decision, the best decision that you can make, you know. And I think that's been a highlight, and I wish everybody was like that. And now I'm not 100% sure out of the three of us here. I've had the opportunity, but Ashley seems like the straightest shooter of all of us, and I haven't had as much work yet with her, but we are establishing that. And so the other thing is the changes, updating. Come on, guys, all of us. The changes that we go through every year, it's like, they're doing what? They're doing what? You know, has anybody in their industry had anybody asking for less as far as compliance?
No.
I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Talk about
it's-
government permits.
it's just never ending, and it just
More
keeps
and more
coming.
red tape.
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
even in joking, you know, it's like whose job here is easier than the other guys, you know?
They're all difficult.
They all have, yeah.
Right.
I know that I wouldn't want to have the job of protecting somebody's assets and then wake up one day and, oh, hey, yeah. So even though we're supposed to close in 3 days, you can't get insured by this person because they don't have a roof that's newer than 15 years old.
What kind of, you know, and then
That kind of blows my mind, honestly.
he has to go back to them.
So don't be afraid of that. There are a couple companies that will.
Okay. And
yeah.
so that's something like that happens, and then just a phone call to Jaclyn, right? And I mean, that's what I would do.
That's why
Call
we
this
always
person.
say
Yeah.
when
At 7:30 in the morning.
Eat the frog early.
That's right. That's right. That's where you gotta, you know, Dan, I know you're really good about, you know, people get under contract and you're like, hey, let's get that insurance figured out. Let's not wait. Granted, we're closing in 30, 60 days, but don't sit on this.
Yeah, a lot of times we've only got 10 days.
10 days of
10, maybe 15,
insurability,
yeah.
right? And I was just able to help a client over Martin Luther King holiday. She's like, we can't get insurance. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. In your particular situation, you can't. And I had to write a letter, and it was, you know, they have to understand.
That's not that's not an easy letter to write.
No.
I'm sure.
And then the clients, you know, being a little bit older, don't understand, well, why are we insured, but why can't you get insurance on it?
Right.
It's a different situation. The market, even in the last 3-4 months, is different than what it was prior to that.
So just because somebody has current insurance on a home, if they're going to sell it, there's a possibility that the new owners may not be able to reach insurability.
That is 100% true for two reasons. If the current people, the sellers, are in the home, and they have had their insurance for a while, they could be locked into that insurability. So obviously your roof gets older time after year, right?
Sure.
So you're already locked in, like you're insurable because you didn't come to them with a 20-year-old roof. It was maybe 10 at the time. You've been there for 10 years and now it's 20 years old. You've done nothing with it. So it could be that scenario. Or like in flood insurance, we've had this where people had their insurance locked in pre the changing of flood maps, right? So
Yeah.
that then changes the scenario. But in addition to the property itself, it could be your buyers. So your buyers may have prior claims that's keeping them from insurance.
Oh. So if the buyer of the new house made some sort of a bogus claim 3 years ago against their insurance, that could keep them from...
Or
Yeah.
multiple
Okay.
claims. And that's why it's so important to have a
But
trusted...
you're saying the seller also, right? The one selling the house may have had a disposition of sorts. Does that affect the policy? Like the house itself has had a claim?
In some scenarios with some carriers, yes. But that is less of an issue.
Okay. That's good news.
Yeah, that is less of an issue.
Okay.
I feel like, so we bought our house in 2017, and not only have we done some major home improvements, we've done major property improvements, and then you bundle in all of the property value hikes
Oh, yeah.
in on that. I mean, and that in the grand scheme of things is what, 5-6 years ago. Okay. That's 5 years is like, whew, it goes by real fast, right?
Yeah, no
Absolutely.
So
No comment.
You said 7 years went in a flash.
right. If how often should someone be checking? Like you said, you check your current clients every year, but let's say that somebody else has not had a review. Like I was shocked at basically what our property is valued at just by circumstances, not even like an actual appraisal or anything else like that. Like after talking to you, like, holy cow, we were underinsured.
Yeah. So in this market, with the inflation the way that it is, with materials going up 4 times, with labor costs going through the roof, right now, for the past, since 2020, we have been shopping every year and finding drastic changes in rebuild values. Because again, if you buy your house at $200,000, it doesn't mean that it's going to cost $200,000 to rebuild. It may cost $300,000 to rebuild.
Especially if you bought your house at $200,000 6 years ago,
Right.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
your
It's
rebuild
gonna cost
value
$320
is
or more.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, we're seeing rebuild values. And of course, every market is a little bit different, but it's just shy of $200 a square foot. Is that right?
Wow.
So,
That sounds
Or
So,
more.
like-
Or more. I mean,
Yeah,
we're looking at 250, 275, depending on. I mean, that's a lower level, build.
so
Go up
from
from there.
But more or less average.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I look at square footage of like a $1,500 house,
1,500 square foot.
1,500 square feet. Thank you. We are rebuild values coming in around 300,000.
that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
sale prices have gone up drastically too.
Yeah,
and I mean,
Right. You're seeing that every day, Dan.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Stuff that used to cost $120 a square foot now is, just a couple of years ago, it's now 180,
Right.
200, 220. Yeah. I mean, some of the new construction stuff is, 240, 250, 260, depending on how
Oh,
you trim it
yeah.
out. Yeah. I mean,
Right,
it's big.
It-
So
Yeah. So, and again, I mean, we never want anyone to fall short
yeah.
on if they do have that loss due to a fire or one of our biggest claims here in the Midwest, a tornado or a windstorm.
Hail.
Hail. Yeah.
Oh man, don't you cringe? It's like my car is not covered
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
like-
Yeah.
You go out and it looks like a piece of foil. Yeah. It's
And it's not like your car is the only one that got hit, so it's
Right.
going to be at least 4 to 6 months before.
well,
this
not
is
all of
fixed.
us have a fleet, Ashley. I mean,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I mean, this has been some good stuff, and if you guys want to know more about your insurance, you want to check your insurance. What areas do you cover, Jaclyn?
Oh, so all of Missouri, all of Illinois, Tennessee, and Texas.
So if you're in those states, how can they get a hold of you to check it? Or, obviously you can't check somebody who's in Montana or Florida, but
Right.
They can ask the questions to their local person
Absolutely.
that we talked about. But if they want you specifically to check it, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can call or text me at 636-346-7021. I also have a website where you can input your information, and then I would follow up with you. That direct website is jaclyninsure.com. So that's JaclynInsureme.com.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's Close to Home podcast. Real people, real life, real stories. We'll catch you next week.